are doing pretty well, I think.
I think so.
Outstanding for a first
Yeah.
time
For first
crowdfunder.
time. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, and hey, you're getting all these old time pros.
Old farts.
Yeah, all the old farts are excited, and
Mhm.
that's not easy to do when
No.
when they've seen the reality of how hard all the stuff is.
Oh
So
yeah.
you're rekindling their joy.
That's great too. That's one of the best compliments I've gotten, honestly. I remember when my editor, when I first hired him, he told me, well, it was before I hired him. It was, he did like a test read and he goes, it made me, your script made me feel like, in an age of whatever, that it was like an old friend, and
Right.
that was a nice feeling, because I think that a lot of comics today, and you could tell it reflects in the work, are made by and for people who are cynical, who've
Yeah.
lost that spark. And I remember
Yeah.
one of the scripts I wrote was like, I was in an angry place, one of the drafts, and I go, the kid who came up with this idea would have hated this. And
Yeah.
I threw it back, and I came back and I kept going, because I think I want to keep that youthful idealism without it being felt like it was written by a dumb kid. I wanted to feel like it was, which thank God I remember I've written the first 8 issues, and I was going back to issue 2, and I was like, ugh. The one that I wrote years ago. I'm a much better writer now. Mike even gave me, even though we didn't go through the full script, just the little bits Mike would give me would be like straight to the point, which is how writers should be. We had this whole log line thing beat into our heads at film school, beaten into us. And Mike would be like, that doesn't interest me. And which is the best thing, by the way. The best advice someone can ever give you is to tell you they don't care.
Or well, I don't know about that. Are you talking about PHENOMENOVA?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, what I mean is, when I gave you a full flowery, log line, so to speak, or more than a log line, the whole, what it's really about, like when I'm like, it's about someone who's idealistic and following his father, you're like, that's it. Because I think at the end of the day, if you give someone a bullet point of what your story is, it really doesn't get to the core of it. Like, okay, a guy gets his parents murdered and puts on a bat costume. That is what Batman is.
Yeah.
But if you're like a guy who wants to make the world a better place, seeing what happened to his parents, and will sacrifice everything, that makes you care.
Yeah.
And I think that was ultimately what I came down to when I was rewriting was, all right, what are superheroes actually about? And this is my love letter to the genre. I have more than enough reasons to love the genre that one issue isn't enough, but I put my best that I have at this time into that issue. So,
all right, let's cut to the chase. We're talking about Vaughn's new project, PHENOMENOVA. Vaughn, what is your story about?
My story is set 20 years after World War III and follows the idealistic son of a war hero who is struck by lightning while holding a mysterious crystal that he found while cave exploring with friends. And he finds himself awakening with lightning powers and lightning speed. And he decides, oh my God, I can be a superhero like the brave heroes that fought during the war. And so he decides to don a makeshift costume. And then he sees on the news, oh my God, there's a reactor going off. This is perfect. There's a heist at a reactor. And his friend's like, this is stupid. You have no idea what you're doing. But naturally, arrogant and feeling like he's on top of the world, he rushes in only to find himself in way over his head fighting a supervillain that is totally out of his league. And he's going to it's going to evolve into a team book. So PHENOMENOVA is the name of the team. But I decided that I wanted to focus on my main character, because if you can't get one character that you care about, good luck getting a team. I think oftentimes people who sit on, I have sheets and sheets of characters, but if I can't make them care about one main character, good luck getting to the rest. And I think often creators throw too much at you and nothing sticks. I want one thing to stick, and then I'll get the next thing, the next thing, and the next thing.
Obviously, you said you went to film school. So where did all those different kind of loves for that kind of, those kinds of art forms and everything start?
It's actually perfect timing. So they started replaying the Spider-Man movies in theaters. I missed Amazing Spider-Man when it was. So I'm probably just going to stick with the Sam Raimi ones in theaters. But the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man came out back in theaters. And even though I had a ton of launch stuff planned for that week, I was like, I'm going to spend the two hours plus, because obviously to and from the theater, to go see this. And the reason is because that's the story that made me fall in love with superheroes, and the first X-Men movie as well. I got into it through the movies, but it was that movie, and it's one of those, there's a lot of superhero movies. It's funny. I was into the Batman movies, but I thought about it, and I don't think I've rewatched the Tim Burton Batman movies since I started reading comics. It's been over 10 years. Because it was like, once I found the comic Batman, I was like, this is a superior version. I didn't need to go back. I will probably eventually, but the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie is one of those very, very few superhero movies where after reading the comics, I love it more because I'm like, this is by someone who actually loves it. And it's a great movie. And I found the pacing, the meticulous pacing in the movie, it's so seamless. The way they get from plot point to plot point to plot point. And it feels like it's taking its time. While also, if we're being technical, like the scenes aren't super long, like, but somehow they convey everything and allow breathing room. Like there are 4 different fights with the Green Goblin and the origin story and introducing all these elements in a 2-hour movie, and it never feels rushed. And I was just kind of awe-inspired. Every time I watch that movie, I just leave with the biggest smile on my face. And I think when I was writing this script, I pulled from that a lot. You know, there's the training montage, there's the slow, you know, when I finally read Amazing Fantasy 15, while I did appreciate it, I think the Sam Raimi one, what it improves on is that it allows those moments to really care for Uncle Ben, he's really discovering his power slowly. Like he punches Flash Thompson, he's like, whoa, what did I do? Wall. You know, in moments like that, I wanted to, so the reason the page count is there is because I wanted him to discover his powers. And I think that leads to some great character moments. In fact, there were too many where I had to cut down. Like, I'll tell you, one of my favorite ones that I had to cut, you know, killing your children, is like, there's this one part where his super speed knocks over a lamp, then he catches it at super speed, but his lightning blows up the lamp. That was a scene I loved, but I had to cut it. But, you know, maybe in a later issue. But I think that people, at first I was rushing to get him in his costume. And the reason I stuck with a makeshift costume for a number of reasons. One, as I was realizing how much origin story stuff I was cutting, I was like, this is some great material. Why don't we stay here? Why don't we stay here? The audience is entertained. Everyone who's read the script likes this stuff. I like this stuff. Let's really have him earn the right to be a superhero. Those my inspirations were the Justice League animated series, and then Spider-Man the animated series, Batman the animated series. But it wasn't until I was in 6th grade and The Dark Knight lit a spark in me years earlier, and I'd kind of fall in and out of superhero obsession phases, I call it. And what kickstarted my comic books, what led me to comic books, was I was going to a new private school when I was in 6th grade. I had moved schools, and it was perfect timing. That day, I go back from school, and on TV, they're playing a rerun of the first episode of the animated series. And they started doing this every day. And so I'd make it a ritual. I'd come home from school, watch the animated series, and I remember seeing On Leather Wings, and I was like, wow, I'm back into Batman. And then that fall, it was like a perfect, when I look back at it, it's like a perfect string of events. Because that fall, this game, Batman Arkham City, comes out. And then that was the next step. So the animated series, then it's the same voice cast almost as the animated series, but more mature. And then that game is done. I have this feeling of, I want more. I want more of this version of Batman. I want to know where this comes from. Let me get into the comics. And so for Christmas, that December, I asked for my first comics. I keep forgetting. I take it off the shelf because I address it every issue, every interview. Batman Hunt was the first comic I read. And I confess I haven't finished it, but I got this book called The Greatest Batman Stories Ever Told. It's just a compilation of stories.
Right.
And there, I just fell in love with the medium. And I started reading, what are the best Batman stories? And I would keep going. And I'd dip in and out of comics. But I think the final bug that caught me here was I was in college. And for some reason, I just caught this itch to read X-Men. And I'm family friends with, so my mom went to high school with the producer of the first 2 X-Men movies. And I asked him, all right, what did you pull from? What's your favorite X-Men comics? He goes, start with Giant Size X-Men #1. And read into Claremont's run. So I did, and I was hooked. And I really understand why comics are great as a medium, because I was like, the way you go from idea to idea to idea to idea. You know, in film, I would have this idea, and they'd be like, yeah, we can't afford that. You're going to have to cut down the characters, make it in one room. And cost like $4,000, right? I had to raise $4.5K. If you go on my YouTube channel, it's a short film called Behind the Curtain. Look at the more recent version because I had to re-edit some stuff. And that cost $4.5K. The crew was not paid. We had to rent the equipment from the school, so it was mostly covered. We barely paid the crew, still $4.5K. Like, it's amazing how much how much that. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, in a comic, look at how much crazier the story could get with 4.5K in a comic. If I want two people talking, same cost as intergalactic explosions, what have you. And I realized I didn't have to keep restricting my ideas. I fell in love with the medium. And I remember the first job I got in comics was my friend from film school's dad started this comic book company. I was like, see if there's any way I can get involved. And so we did this comic called Hunter Ninja Bear. And I was hired as an editor on that book. And I was spoiled. I remember I was on the phone with my friend's dad and I'm like, yeah, no, it's great. So many people are doing indie now. I hear Chuck Dixon does a lot of indie. He goes, yeah, you're working on Chuck's book. Like, of all the writers, I randomly brought up Chuck. And I was like, you're joking, right? A dream come true. And I was spoiled from the beginning, so then I had to temper my expectations, which is why I wrote like so many issues back to back. Because I was like, oh, I could do this. 12 issues. That's not how reality is. I fell in love with it. And I would think I was reading one of Chuck's scripts and then going, so that's what a comic script looks like compared to screenplay. And as I started changing what I had written in a screenplay to that, it actually made me fall more in love with comics because I realized, like, okay, there's certain things you have to write it differently, because the mediums are different, and it made me appreciate what each medium has to offer. There's things you can do in a comic you can't do in a film. There's things you can do in a film you can't do in a comic. And it deepened my love for both. And everything has just made me fall deeper in love with comics. And I'm glad to be doing it.
So did you bring the hammer down on Chuck at all when you were editing his book?
You know what's funny is I still need to interview Chuck. I almost have like this fear that I haven't read enough of his stuff, even though I've read plenty. You know what's funny? I didn't really talk directly to Chuck. I would pass the notes to my boss. I wanted to, and I'm sure my boss is probably like, he's just going to fanboy out. I don't want him, probably. My boss even warned me. He's like, dude, don't fanboy over. Chuck doesn't want to hear that. Chuck has had so many people. I'm sure if you reach out and say, oh my God, I'm a fan, he's probably going to be, he's like, just be professional. I'm like, okay, I'll pretend like this isn't the biggest. Again, this is one of the first comics I read, right? Chuck, Robin year one. I was like, okay, tempering that. And what I'd do is I'd read it and I'd write down notes on a piece of paper, and then my boss and I would talk on the phone for like an hour or so, and then we get back. And I remember when I saw one of the scenes I came up with implemented, that was so cool. Because I was like, wow, I actually have good ideas. So that was great.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to school in Emerson College in Boston.
I used to live in Boston.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me that. I thought it was cool. The one downside I will say is as soon I turned 21, and so throughout my college career, I'd be walking by all these Irish pubs. So I'm Irish, but also, I was like, oh yes, when I turn 21, we're gonna have fun and then coronavirus, they all shut down when I turned 21.
Probably dodged the bullet there.
Like one class I was on, so like they had this whole system where you send out a link, right? I don't know how it happened, but one class I was on, we had like a special guest speaker. Like, it was a big deal. Someone must have leaked the link to somewhere on the internet, and some random people started joining my class and just screaming at the teacher. It was insane. It was college. Pure chaos.
Just like in-person classes.
Yeah.
Do you think you learned from it?
I mean, I guess I learned in those classes. It was easier to slack off in a way, because you could be in your room, doing whatever. But they would often make you turn your camera on, so that way they could really inspect your body language. The thing is, you could get away with stuff more. I remember one time I was in class, and my roommate just kept messing with me in the background. I was like, dude, like, they're gonna yell. Like, so what he would do is he'd stand behind me with his computer and just a picture of me. And I'm like, can you not do this? And my teacher would like privately message me. She's like, if you need to leave. I'm like, dude.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny to me, but
It was funny to me. It was funny to me. I pretended like it wasn't funny at the time. I was like, this is serious. This is uncalled for. My roommate is out of line. But like, I was deep down. I thought it was hysterical. So I honestly probably remember that more than a lot of which my mom would not like to hear. So no, Mom, I learned a lot. If you're listening to this,
any experiences or anything like that from real life that you put into your stories?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I pulled a lot from some of the characters are based. It's no secret that I may have pulled from my own life when creating these characters. It's not really a secret. I remember at one point I was going to have the mom be blonde to be different from my real life. But my mom's like, no, she better be a redhead because my mom's a redhead. I'm like, all right, he's a redhead. I came up with this idea when I was in second grade. And so my best friend character was based on my best friend at the time, and then kind of pulled from others as I went. And then also he wasn't just going to be a one. Ultimately, you make the decision as you write that you can't have them be too heavily based on your real life people, because then you start doing it and you lose the escapism where then you're like, so I tell my friends, I'm like, these characters are loosely based on you, but if they do something where you're like, I would never do that, that's because they're not you. Same thing with my character. He does stuff that I would never do. But ultimately I was like, well, I'm writing something to escape and I'm just staying. This is not Vaughn Coleman. This character is not Vaughn Coleman. He was like based from a lot of my experiences, but ultimately they go a certain way, and that's for the better. But I pulled from myself a lot. I pulled from my high school experiences, whether it be dealing with bullies, whether it be how my friends would interact, the way we'd mess with each other. When I designed the friend group, ultimately I cut down a lot because originally there was going to be more, but I designed the friend group and then just kind of based them off my friend and I's interactions with each other. I came up with like a history of the friend group. Like, this is how close this person is with this person, who's closest in the group, who joined when. And even though that's not on the page, I like to think my character is inside and out. So when I'm writing, when it gets to the dialogue, it's like, boom, they know each other.
Or little notes or whatever. How many different things like that do you do as far as like outlining? Do you do like the note card thing that is
everything
popular?
Which is why my notes are a disaster. I have notes in my phone, like money notes. I have notes in my apps on my computer. I have notepads, multiple notebooks. I have Post-its. And so they're all, I don't have, like, people will have like a document that's fully organized. I kind of, but also don't have that. So I have multiple of those, but also none, if that makes sense. Because they're everywhere. But the important thing is what sticks up here. But sometimes I find often you just need to start again from a blank page, I find. And then the right stuff from there will follow you. And if need be, you can go back to another page.
It's just the act of actually writing it down or putting it out there is kind of all you need. And then like you're saying, then the good parts or whatever, like, stick.
Even yesterday, I was getting back into finally writing a script, and I'm remembering how much of it, thank God, I decided to rewrite, because there was one character name. I'm like, that's a terrible name. And I was rewriting, and I was like, oh, I forgot. This is why things take a while. You have to, you're getting a good pacing going, and then you hit a block, and you're like, let me figure this out. We're good. And I was about to hit a nice flow, and I was like, this is 1 a.m. I got to stop. And so I did, but I'm going to get back to it. And I think that's why it's good to keep those older drafts, is because sometimes you see stuff that's worth keeping and sometimes you don't. I was looking at an old page from years ago, and I was like, this is 8 panels on a page. I'm like, I could cut that down. I could spread that out.
It was one of the hardest lessons I had to learn, because I always wrote densely. But as time goes on, I use less and less panels per page. And I learned that from Chuck. Chuck's last book, the Alpha Core book, it's like 104 pages long, but that's because there are many double page spreads, but they're crammed with action.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I liked about that book so much, is even the first couple pages, it's so much breathing room, yet so much information and so much action.
And yet the page was filled with art. Which had to do with the story.
Yeah, I was looking at my issue 2, and I'm like, this is way too many pages. And then my first splash page, I conveyed like probably what was equivalent to like 3 pages of information in that. And I'm like, this is much better. You get better at, I think, condensing. Like some of my earlier drafts, people are like, 64 was a lot. I'm like, you should have seen my earlier drafts.
How long is each issue?
So this issue, I wanted to be a giant size first issue. It was okay. So it was a weird thing. It was going to be a big first issue, and then I made it 3. and then for Phenom, they said make it 3 issues. And then when it didn't end up getting through Phenom, I was like, let me make it one giant, because I decided this is my starting and this is my stopping. The story needed to be 64 pages. So it's like the equivalent of one giant sized issue. And then from then on, I think I'm going to do 24-page issues. At least that's how I have the rest written. So I have 8 issues written. I'm revising 2. Most of the issues, I think, for the most part, are very solid. I'm very happy with how it's going, but I think I'm going to do 24 pages. Just that I was inspired by this stuff. But I think about how, like, New Mutants, for example, had that 64-page graphic novel to start with, right? And then it led into the 24-page issues. And I figured, I was talking to Peter Simeti about this. I was like, well, it's more confusing to explain to people. You start with the graphic novel and then you go into the comic. Same with Excalibur. You do Excalibur, Sword is Drawn. I'd rather just call it issue 1 and then issue 2, issue 3, issue 4, issue 5. I'd rather just keep it that simple. And I felt that in an age of so many issue 1s that are forgettable, right? I wanted mine to be unforgettable, which meant I needed to go above and beyond. And that you don't get a second first impression. Because Mike, I remember, I think you were busy at the time. I was like, oh, I need Mike's full feedback on my script before I hire my artist. And I do think I would love to get your feedback, obviously, but I was like, I can't wait on every professional I know to get permit. Because I had asked Billy, because Billy Tucci just be like, oh, I just did it. So I definitely, I asked a lot of people. Mike gave me some great feedback. Rini gave me some great feedback. I asked so many people for all sorts of feedback, but at a certain point you have to pull the trigger and know that you'll be a better creator by the end of issue 1, and then issue 2, and then issue 3.
Is the book ready to go to the printer?
The book has 43 pages colored. 50. I just got right before I was about to go on the call, I got messages from my artists. I didn't get to read all of them. So I'm going to guess we're around 56 about inked, I think. 10 pages have been lettered. So it's getting close. It's getting very close to printer ready.
I'm getting the vibe that you're kind of more like a director in a way. Like you're like a director who writes. Like, I think you would like the kind of overseeing the team or whatever, too.
Yeah, I'm trying to dial back more, though. I'm trying to learn to be more of just a writer. But I'm at this point, I'm trying to get better at just letting my artists do their thing.
Yeah.
But I do find myself, I am very much a director. That's a good point. I'm trying to get better at just that obsessive need to, no, do that. I'm trying to get better at letting the artist breathe a bit. But I do find sometimes giving direction is key.
Depends on the artists too. I mean, because some of them get confused easily if they don't understand, but then other ones are like, "You don't need. Let me do the art. You do the red."
I think my artist, and I are finding our footing.
Yeah,
which is why I say we get better with everything.
Yeah, I did have a question. Why do you pick such long names for your stuff? Where does that come from? You're a syllable lover.
Syllable lover.
So PHENOMENOVA was not the original title. So right here you can see this title is Living Legends, but that was too common and kind of taken. So when I went into this like manic state where I was like, oh God, I need to come up with a new name, because I was sick of pitching a nameless book to people. Right. Like I go in the house, oh, your new comic that looks great. What's it called? I'm coming up with a new one. And I was like, all right, I'm settling down. I'm putting everything else aside. I'm coming up with a new name. And I'd write down, all right, what's the book about, thematically, whatever, for a few days, go at it. Okay. Well, what are superheroes? So one of the names I came up with during that time that didn't fit this, that I applied to the superheroes that fought in World War III, was Crusader Corps. I was like, it doesn't work for a team of teenage heroes, but it does work for this team. So let's go with that. Okay. So then we go, what are they? Well, phenomenons. They're kind of a phenomenon in the sense that they're like, oh, they're a superhero. It's like that celebrity's a phenomenon. They're also a phenomenon in the sense that they have these supernatural abilities that are totally uncommon, right? Yeah. And ever since the word, they're a phenomenon. I want the book itself to be a phenomenon. Okay. So maybe I'll call it phenomenons or something, but that might be too generic. Okay, let's put that aside. Yeah. Okay. Well, then another word I had come up with, and I was looking at like other words for stars or things with energy. Well, Nova. Nova is a young, bright star full of energy and potential. And I had that on the list. And then I was mixing and matching words. I was like, PHENOMENOVA. Oh, I kind of like that. So I put it on the list. And by the end of that night, I had decided on PHENOMENOVA. And then I sit down, I'm laying in bed, and because I'm like, oh, this is great, this is so good. And as I'm laying in bed, I'm like, this sucks. It's too many syllables. I don't like it. And then I'm like, all right, I'm just going to sleep. And then I wake up in the morning and I like it again. And I tell some people. And it took me a few days of back and forth before I finally went with it. I'm like, it's going to grow on people. Some people aren't going to like it. Some people will like it. And some people that initially didn't like it do like it. And some people that didn't like it, they'll learn to live with it. I, didn't like it at first. Well, I did like it, and then I didn't, and I went back and forth. And now I love it.
No, I tell a great story, they're going to love it.
That's what my whole thing was, because I'm like, okay, well, how many names, if you were to just pitch me, then like X-Men, if I'm being honest, if you were to just throw that name at me, I don't know that I would have loved it. But it's just, it is the name, you know what I mean? And once it's accepted that is what it's called, people just take it.
And it's hard because there are, like you're saying, there are so many words and names that are already taken.
So, oh my God, are there?
It's like, so, and obviously you couldn't just call it Nova. So it's like, I don't know, with Vaughn, like it kind of fits. I mean, I wouldn't want him to name everything 4 and 5 syllables, but.
And I had a similar process when it came with the amount of superheroes with lightning powers. I mean, there's so many. Well, and also I had Lord Lightning as a name. So Lightning Lord was taken, but not Lord Lightning. So I brought it up on Rainey's stream with Creative Block, proudly. Now, the whole panel laughed at me live on air when I brought up that name.
Nice.
So there is a reference in the book where he has crossed out superhero names, and one of them is some of the old names. So Lightning Lad was the first name I came up with when I was younger, only to be devastated to find out that someone else also thought that was a brilliant idea 50 years ago. But, then Lord Lightning is crossed out on the list. Bill Diaz was very insistent on me naming the character Volt. I felt, which it's a good name, but I put that on as a reference to him. I did put that on the list.
You could have gotten a sponsorship with that too.
Volt?
And then, with the Nissan Volt or whatever the car
is.
Or
a lawsuit.
Or a lawsuit.
No, I'm kidding. I don't think they could do that.
Nah.
They don't care. You can't copyright a name unless it's in the same field. I mean, if you wanted to create a car called the Volt, GM would say it.
Yeah, it would be really difficult for somebody else to use PHENOMENOVA.
It would. Yeah, good luck. Good luck.
And what's the other one? The other one has a long name too. Your other.
So so when I was coming up with it, I came up with this. Initially, I cast this name aside because I didn't think it fit the character. I thought it was an awesome name that didn't fit the character, and then I decided, well, yeah, it does. It can. Galvanite. So galvanism, Galvanite. So that was the name I decided on, and it's like, okay, well, and I actually found that. Well, the ways it doesn't fit, it will, because all right, so he's a makeshift costume. He's not fully there.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, that's the whole thing with this character, right? Is he almost projects this better idea onto himself than he is. And we have this hero that he looked up to in World War III. That's a knight. So it's not about him wearing armor. It doesn't have to be a literal thing, right? Like spiders are not red and blue. Doesn't mean he can't have a red. Like he doesn't have to have armor to be Galvanite. Batman doesn't wear armor and he's still the Dark Knight. And I realized that Galvanite was a name because it galvanizes people. I wanted a name that evoked energy and that inspired people, and that was cool. And I thought, well, Galvanite, and it is electricity. I liked the word. I love the word lightning. I love it, and I had to let go of the possibility. I was like, I need something with the word lightning, and I was like, I'm pigeonholing myself. There are other lightning words. Just let it go. But I do have a list of a bunch of other lightning names that were cool that I didn't use yet. So I'm probably going to use one of them. I'm going to use for a villain. I'm sure Storm Strike that was a name I was going to use for a bit. I have a bunch of other ones that I'm going to use for other characters, but Galvanite was the one I ultimately decided what's a main character name you're going to be proud of? And that was one I was proud of. But Galvanite, that's only 3 syllables.
Yeah, it's not. It's
no PHENOMENOVA, but it is the word count. The letter count.
Yeah.
But not all my characters are going to have that. Some are shorter, some are longer.
I wouldn't think so. Are you going to do a comic about the original heroes?
Yes. So as I was writing it out, the history of the world,
Right.
and World War III and all the heroes that fought in it and what happened, how did it happen? And then the more I start breaking down, explaining it, it becomes a story. This happened
Right.
and this happened. I'm like, this is a story. What? And I'm envisioning battles, and I'm like, I got to just tell this whole story start to finish. I hate when people deprive story details, so you have to read the spinoff. Like everything you need to know
Right.
about that team, you will learn to understand PHENOMENOVA, and to make PHENOMENOVA a better story, you will learn in PHENOMENOVA. PHENOMENOVA comes first. But you don't need to know everything about World War III and what happened, and their story is going to be worth following. So, yes, there will be a prequel series, limited series, set during World War III with superheroes. Part of me thought I should have led with that, and there's a lot of logical reasons why PHENOMENOVA wasn't the story to start with. I also had already a 10-pager published for this book, Land of the Lawless. Strategically, it did make sense to do Land of the Lawless first, but man, my heart was with PHENOMENOVA.
Yeah.
And so I figured this book will sell. So I plan on doing that. That's its own universe. But Crusader Corps, I feel like almost hyping up the background of what happened in the war. Because if I'm already currently telling what happened 20 years ago and then I jump to the future, like, because if I lead with Crusader Corps, then I have to finish that story before I jump 20 years in the future. But if I'm just telling this one, there will always be interest in what happened back. But I also just wanted to tell PHENOMENOVA first.
Yeah. Is that book you just showed us, is that printed, Vaughn?
Yes. So this was in the back of this tragedy trade paperback. So I won a writing contest. This is an idea. When I was at film school, I was very tired of political correctness. It's like, all right, what's an idea? What's everything I'm not allowed to do right now? And what's everything I want to see in a comic book? All right, I want to see a hot chick kicking ass. She loves guns. She loves America. Okay. But then that started. But the problem is once you do that, and I came up with the opening scene first, actually, which is not normally how I do things. And then I kind of crafted, well, what would the world be like? What would the character be like that led to this scenario? So the opening sequence is self-contained. It's a self-contained action sequence that I wrote as a screenplay that I never finished the screenplay, but I was writing it for class. And another thing, too, is if you have a character that's a hot chick, if you're an artist, you can draw that for however long and you never get bored. As a writer, you got to have something that grits you to make the character. And so I was like, well, what makes this character good? And now she's one of my favorite characters I've ever come up with because they had to come up with something gripping. So that is a story I would love to tell. I have it planned out. But yeah, I won a writing contest with that 10-page short story. And because of that, I got published in that book. And I would love to finish the story. I could even make an ash can out of it if I want.
So do you have plans to get your comics or graphic novels or whatever out in other ways other than just Kickstarters and things like that? Are you looking at the direct market or looking at other alternative ways to get things out?
I'd love to. I want to do a website. I'd love to get it in other places too. I'm kind of building bit by bit. I would love it to be in the direct market. I'd love to be in every market I can get it in. That's the thing. I mean, Rini and I have talked about this. Rini's doing it. We've talked a lot about expanding and going global comics. She's doing a lot of stuff. So I was going to have a digital version of my campaign at one point, but I always thought like I'd rather have it on a website or like a high quality version. And no, like PDFs are fine, but I wanted to do something that gives a special reader experience for the digital. And so I think I'm going to wait for that. So I'm going to have the physical first. I think delaying gratification is key too. I think a lot of the time people chase instant gratification, and that's a problem.
I can't even imagine like back with when Mike did stuff for Marvel DC, where you'd write stuff like half a year before it actually comes out.
It wasn't that long, actually. Sometimes
it wasn't back then.
As 3 months, but we sent everything back and forth via FedEx, and all these packages are arriving and leaving all the time. There was no internet back then. Vaughn, do you draw at all?
No, I should learn.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a valuable skill, but it has its values even for people who are not artists.
Yeah, I realized that as I was writing a page for the comic page for the first time in months that I went back to, is this too many panels per page? Let me look at how they did it. And I'm like, no.
Right.
The best way to judge that is to draw the page out yourself.
Yeah.
Even with stick figures or whatever.
That's right. And with all the dialogue and captions that you want to include. Then you can look at that page and say, that's right, or that's too much, or it's not enough.
Yeah. My
You
only thing
probably-
is I just feel like an artist would come up with something better than that for me, but I also do understand the value of it.
Well, a good artist is going to
yeah.
find a way to maximize your vision.
And that's
Yeah.
why I got to get better at correcting my artists and saying, no, sometimes they're right and I'm wrong. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning every step of the way.
And you definitely seem smart enough that you're getting it like with the different personalities and stuff, and kind of feeling it out and feeling like, I have to work with this way with this person and this way with this person. And
yeah, and I make a lot of mistakes, and I hope I don't drive my artists too crazy. But I'm always telling them, if you have an issue with me, be honest. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
You know. So I'm always, if I'm not doing something right, let me know. Be transparent. That's why I think it's important that people communicate with each other in terms of collaborating.
So how much of this universe do you have like mapped out? Like, are you going to even release anything like separate, like almost like a Vaughn's guide to the to Vaughn's universe?
I'd think about it, but I think I'd rather reveal it in the story, in all honesty.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Well,
that
I was mainly thinking, for afterwards. But
I'd love to. I would love to do like an ultimate guide, like something like that. Yeah. But let's get the volume out.
Others, Vaughn. Leave it to others.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, after 45 years of Nexus, there are all sorts of guides online that we have nothing to do with. Because it just reflects people's fascination with the character, and if you succeed, you'll know it because people are going to start writing about your characters.
Yep,
that's a
delayed
good point.
gratification. 45 years.
Yeah,
that's what I think. I think that's a key part of it.
So I gotta ask you. You talked to Peter. Are you going to be doing anything with Alterna?
That could be great. I could talk to him. I hadn't planned that yet. Why? You think I should?
Just something to consider.
I wonder if he'd even be interested in your other one, that you were talking about doing like an ash can.
Yeah, I mean that one, or I could even just come up with another idea too.
Yeah,
like, especially if he does. Like he looks like he's doing cryptid stuff. He's got that in his things. Yep. Aliens, he's into alien stuff. If I even come up with a new idea for him,
like I think, like I see his passion and how he's just pushed through and driven through, and it reminds me of you too. And that's why I kind of say that. Like
he Peter Sinetti?
Yeah, he has like that driving passion, and he hasn't given up even through any thumbnails or anything. Wow, what's it called? Where you do
storyboards?
Storyboards, yes.
I never had to learn that. No, we would. I mean, we'd learn things about it, but we never had to draw it out.
You never had to do it. Yeah, I was just wondering if any of that stuff kind of informed your.
Probably not really, because I love comics. I'd say not the storyboarding. Film it impacts the way I write.
Yeah.
And just the learning that panels don't have to look like this all the time. This ratio was an adjustment. Seeing, because that's still to how I kind of see things, and learning to see it in a different way, and accepting that my whole vision isn't contained by this. You know, it opens the mind. It opens when you work within a box, you find that you that's why I think limitations can be a good thing. In every single medium, you're working within a box of some kind. The box is shaped differently, though, and that doesn't mean you can't think outside the box. But sometimes thinking within the box is good.
Do you have any advice for up and coming people who would also like to do Kickstarters and comics or
yes? One of the first things is you got to build your own audience. And what I mean by that is, okay, so networking is everything. You always are pitching, even before you're selling the product, you're selling the product. What I mean by that is the reason I made 3,000 my launch day was because I had that many people and more waiting to buy the product because I had already sold it to them before I sold it to them.
Right.
Another thing is being an individual. Don't rely on anyone else for an audience. Don't rely on anyone else to sell your book. Because what's going to happen, say you have a disagreement with someone, if you lose it, then they were never yours to begin with. You want to make sure that you have your own audience, that you have your own people. You want to make sure that you are providing something that no one else can, and making sure that people know, because you are inherently, if you're a creator, providing something that no one else can. want to make sure people know that, enough people respect that. Network, get on as many shows as possible. Don't get defeated if someone doesn't back your book, or if you don't. Most of the shows I go on, I don't get any new backers during the show. That's fine.
Right.
Just because someone doesn't back today doesn't mean they won't back tomorrow, or the next product, or the next product, or the next product. There are people whose books I want that I haven't backed yet. There are creators that I like that I haven't backed yet. That doesn't mean I'm not going to. You have to understand delayed gratification. Instant gratification is a problem. Build up your audience, build up your platform. Understand that if you're self-publishing, for a while at least, most of your work is going to go into marketing and building up your audience. And that's okay, because it will be worth it. When you see that number, it'll be worth it. Don't expect to make your money back on your first campaign. This is an investment. But if you believe in it, you have to be willing to make sacrifices. Nothing good in this world is achieved without sacrifice.
And before we went on to, I think you had really good advice too. And I would say this because some people get frustrated when they're on a show or talking. But try to stay up on every show that you're doing. Try to stay positive and remember your purpose.
Don't let them see you sweat.
Don't fall asleep on camera.
Yeah, well, and remember why
do.
you're doing what you're doing, because Vaughn said this, and I know Mike and I have both like experienced this too, where we'll be on a show, it goes fantastic and all this stuff, but we don't get much of a bump from it, and there's not like new stuff, and then we'll be on a show that seems kind of dead. They don't have that many followers, but then you get a decent
that
bump.
happens to me many times.
Yeah,
I remember people were like on Cecil's show, people were like, "Oh, Vaughn, you're not getting that many." It's like, dude, I don't. And people were like, "Oh, are you nervous?" I'm like, "I already made 10K first of all." So, but not saying I can't make more, but it's also, okay, I got 3 backers. They didn't refresh right away, but I got 3 backers. People will pour in if they want to, and if they don't, that's okay. You move on. You move forward. Don't dwell on who. And this is, everyone struggles with this.
Yeah.
Don't dwell on who didn't back. Be excited about who did, and who's going to back. Make sure you sell them. Sell it to them. And don't be afraid to be a little bit of a nuisance, but just a little bit. You don't want to overboard, but you do want to be a little pushy. You got to be a little pushy. It is, especially if you're a first-time creator. Like, we haven't earned the right to. If you're creating something brand new, you haven't earned the right to fully relax yet. You can relax. Doesn't mean you can never relax, but you can't just put it out there and just collect money. It doesn't work. It doesn't work like.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because it forces you to get creative in the marketing. Creativity isn't just on the page. It's how you get people to look at the page and how you get people to buy the comic.
Are there preferred places for people to follow you and follow your comics until you get your website built?
Yes. So, and my website currently is just like Rebel Oasis Studios is currently just the MailChimp page, which all the information, but that will be the website name, Rebel Oasis Studios. But you can Rebel Oasis on socials more, and also Vaughn Coleman is just on all. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I passed 800 subscribers. I just did a 2-hour-long video essay on Final Fantasy VII. I make videos on there. Check out my YouTube channel. My name, you can find me on all socials. Vaughn M. Coleman on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Rebel Oasis, you could find on those socials too, or Rebel Oasis Studios, depending. I wish it could be the same amongst all, but alas.
Right, yeah.
And so Vaughn Coleman and Rebel Oasis Studios, and all social platforms, you'll be able to find me on there. So,
do you still have a campaign going right now?
Yes. So PHENOMENOVA is on Fund My Comic. I will be starting a Kickstarter as well. So keep an eye out for that, but it is on Fund My Comic. Anyone who backs will get an exclusive free mini print. And the variant covers, like I said, I'll have a website later, but you will not be able to get the variant covers on there. The mini print is for backers only. So if you're a backer and you want those exclusives and you get the book first before everyone else, make sure you back the book. You won't regret it. And the faster this one funds, the more this one funds, the faster we can get the next one and the next one and the next one. So if you're interested, absolutely make sure you do it. And you don't want to miss out. If you're like, I had the chance to back this book before it was cool and say I was there from the beginning, but I chose not to. Oh yeah, that Vaughn Coleman guy is a big name now. Yeah, I could have backed him. And you tell your kids, it's like, those war propaganda things. Like, what did you do during the war, Dad?
Right.
You want to be the dad? No, you don't. So make sure you back this book if you're interested.
And fundmycomic.com is definitely a great place to support any of the comic creators, because more of the money goes to them and the creators than on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and they definitely don't control and bring the hammer down as much as the other places
Some
do.
others we could mention.
Yeah, that we could mention. So it really is a great place to support Vaughn, and Mike has a thing on there. I'm too stupid to have anything on there right now, but
thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute blast. I was looking forward to getting on this show. So
very cool.
Fun.
We'll hope this is one of the shows that gives you another bump.
And if not, I had a good time and no regrets.
Right.
Well, I think a lot of people are going to want to hear what you had to say.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. Well, that means something. Definitely. So my opinion has value. That's good.
Yes, it does.
It's always good to hear.
I will remain in the studio until it's finished.
Wow. Okay. And I will cut that out when I edit this video too.
Good.
All right.
When the whole world was dragged into World War III, brave men like my father fought on the front lines. And they weren't alone. That was 20 years ago. Now it's up to us to carry on their legacy. And every so often, the earth from which we come gives way for something new, something greater to be born. And with them, even greater threats to face. Bring it on! PHENOMENOVA. For you, Dad. For you.